Hi, I'm Sequoiah with Project Tree Collard, and today's video is about how to prepare your perennial tree collards for the upcoming weather that's typical of fall and winter and spring. So this video is not about how to grow tree collards in climates where they're not naturally perennial. This is about how to keep them healthy and ready for that kind of weather. Now, some of the tree collards varieties, such as Daventon and Cosmic Kale, and in my experience, Big Blue and Dinosaur tree collards, and sometimes even Michigan, they just tend to naturally be compact and grow upwards. They tend not to do the loop-de-loop-de. That's very typical of the purple tree collards, like this little piece here. Jolly Green can do that loop-de-loopy. It also depends on how much shade you have them in. The more shade you have, the more likely they are to do that kind of strange growth. So the problem with that is, you know, it's growing horizontally and then going up, and then with the weight of the rain and the winds and the weight of snow, you know, it might just break off. If I'm the main stalk, it might just really break off and cause injury to the main plant. And then the plant may not be able to wall that injury off and may introduce some fungi or mold or something like that in it. So we want to just prepare them for winter. And we do this through pruning and through staking. Sometimes it's easier to go ahead and do your pruning first so that you know what you're working with, and then you're more able to stake it. Sometimes you can use one T-post or piece of rebar. Rebar does tend to lean a bit because it doesn't have any flange holding it into the soil. But sometimes you can use two and have part of the plant tied to this one and part of the plant tied to that one. So here I have an example of tree collards that I'm going to prune. And they look really beautiful from the outside if you're just walking by. But when you come up to them, and especially if you look from the back side, you're like, oh, you know, they're growing kind of crazy. And over the years that I've had tree collards for 15, 20 years, I sometimes photograph like the woody stalks that are like corkscrew. I mean, they just really will grow crazy, especially if they're really tall. They'll be really tall, and then a wind or rain will knock them down, and then they'll grow that way, and they'll grow in and over, and they can be really, really long if you don't watch out. So it's important to prune them pretty regularly, and I probably haven't pruned this particular one in a little while. So I'm going to share that with you today. So again, I'm not so concerned about just the plant that's very vertical. Like, for example, hopefully you can see this. This one here is growing very much from the center of where it's planted. And it's quite straight, growing straight up. I could trim it if I'd like, but it's really not the issue. Here we have a whole lot that's gone kind of down to the ground and back up. And it is going to be hard for you to see exactly what I'm doing. But this one, you can see it more after I cut it. This one has gone down to the ground and back up. So I'm going to go ahead and take that. So see the horizontal bit here, and then back up. So now that stem that I cut, the dormant nodes on the stem that look basically like a bare branch are going to sprout out, and it's going to be closer to the central location of where I planted the plant. So that's what we want, is to rein them in and have them going more vertically. It's late September, and I have plenty of time and warm weather ahead, at least a month before the rains start. And that's when there could be a lot of wind or weight of the rain. So this is a great time for me to cut them back. We're not in a heat wave, and I have plenty of time. So here's another one. And down here is another one. So I might add, if your tree collards are very small and scant, you're not going to be cutting as much as I am. But I have 50 of these to cut, so they're not so precious to me. A lot of times they're crossing each other, like this one was crossing all these other ones, and just kind of in the way. So now I've pruned enough that I can actually see inside and see what's actually going on in here, which is good. Got that guy out. If you have a young tree collard plant and it mainly has one central leader, this is a great time to make a cut so that it creates side shoots and can weather the storms better. Here, these look very bare, but I made the cut and we have new growth, nice and dense, coming up on the inside. My memory is they went way out over the edge of the bed and up somewhere out in the path. So by cutting that back, I'm encouraging all this new growth that's starting up, and it's going to go upright and be in the bed and a lot more able to withstand snow. There's no right and wrong with the pruning. I may well make a decision here to cut back to some of this new growth. So that's only like another 3 inches, but what that's going to do if I make a cut here is that's going to activate the dormant buds in here to grow up. And then maybe by the time of the storms, I'll actually have it cut back here. There will be a lot of growth on the inside, and it will be even more equipped to handle the weather. Same here. If I just cut back a few more inches, it's going to encourage dormant buds in here to grow. And then I can follow up later and cut it back even more. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about staking. And here we have one tree collard that's leaning forward. So I could prune a bit and stake it, or I could just stake it up and tie it up. And then we also have this one here. This one here has one central leader. It doesn't have any side shoots. So it probably would be a good time to also prune the top off and stake it. So my imperfect rebar is here and my mallet. Now if you're dealing with much taller stakes, you might need a full-size mallet. You might need a ladder to drive it in because it's so tall. You might have T-stakes which have a flange on them and they stay more sturdy in the ground, but we work with what we have. So you want to drive it in at least a few inches away from the central trunk. You don't want to hurt any of the major roots. Wow! I forgot to mention that these are planted in a hugel mound, so there's a whole lot of wood debris in this mound here, and then it's got soil and compost on top. So I forgot how easily that would drive in. And I'm going to tie this one upright. Looks actually quite nice. One nice thing about rebar that I like is that it's rusty and it kind of blends in with the garden, so you don't see it as much. So now it's tied up, this one. It looks really nice, but I'm going to go ahead and ruin that beautiful beauty by cutting the top off, because I want it to branch out long term. That's what I want. So this is some beautiful greens here that I can eat, and I can get a cutting and make a new baby big blue tree collard for someone. And then here with this one, I'm going to be also driving a stake in, tying it up, and probably here I'll show an example of cutting. So I'm going to do a little bit of cutting before I start. That looks good to me. And the stake is so rusty that I lost it. Oh, here it is. This is probably not long enough. So you want those stakes to be nice and solid. Here in a hugel mound, that's not really going to happen because there's so much wood beneath and hollow empty spaces. So I'm just seeing, I don't want to damage the plant when I'm tying it up, you know, I just do it very carefully. So something like that will do for now. Probably before the cold starts, I'll take cuttings from this upper part right here where my left hand is and ship those off to someone. So I'm not going to cut them right now. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you've learned something about how you can go ahead and take some risks and make some cuts and be brave with caring for your tree collards. There's nothing sadder to me to just sheer neglect people who say, oh yeah, I got some 4 years ago and I haven't done much other than pick some leaves for cooking, and now what? And they'll send me pictures of these really gangly, tall, loop-de-loop-de plants. So let's try to not let that happen and prune them a few times a year, especially at this time, the late summer before the storms have hit. So if you haven't already hit the subscribe button, I'd really appreciate it. It encourages me to make more content. These videos are a lot of work. I want to know that you're learning and enjoying. Leave a comment, give a thumbs up on the video. It's really helpful for me. And if you're interested in obtaining some cuttings, some plants or seeds of tree collards, you can go to projecttreecollard.org where we have those things available for you. Thanks for watching.